I have been on a journey to be someone. And along the way, I learned the secrets. It's your friends, the people you choose to spend time with. My life, health, and wealth have been changed forever by the people around me. And now it's time for you to meet my friends. This is the Be Someone podcast with Michael Hong. Welcome back to the Be Someone podcast with Michael Hong. Today I'm here with my friend Brandon Rickman. He and I got to know each other through a mastermind that we're both in. And I was like, brother, you are doing huge things right now in real estate. So I was like, we got to have you on the podcast. How's it going, Brandon?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat with you a little bit today.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit before we started the show about what you got going on. So I'm like, wait, let's go. Let's get the show on the road. But before we get to what you're doing now, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got started?
Sure. So, my name is Brandon Rickman, in Atlanta, Georgia. And my dad was actually a contractor. He was a builder. So I kind of grew up around real estate and construction my whole life. Did some new construction early on and then got into the flipping world. And I know most people usually, investors, start in wholesaling and then move to flipping. I did it backwards. Started in flipping and did that for a few years. And then actually went through the last market crash of '08, '09. I was full time building new houses and flipping houses at the time. So kind of had to regroup after that, got flushed down the toilet with everybody else and had to restart. And then focus primarily on wholesaling for a number of years, and now kind of do a mix of both flipping and wholesaling.
You do a mix of flipping and wholesaling. All right. Um, so let's turn back the clock a little bit. Do you remember your first deal?
I do remember my first deal. Yes.
All right. So
Yeah.
how did you find your first deal?
So I went with a company who did marketing on a monthly basis. So basically, I paid for the first month. I paid $5,000. This company to do online marketing and send me leads. And at the end of that 30-day period, I had zero deals. And so second month, $5,000. At the end of that month, zero deals. So third month, $5,000. So now I'm $15,000 in. At the end of that month, I finally got a deal under contract that I was able to assign to another investor for $35,000. So I was like, okay, it took me 3 months, but at the end of that 3 months, I'd spent 15,000 and then made 35. So I was able to pay myself back, have some profit to put back in the business. And I was like, okay, I can do this full time now.
That's awesome. How did you find the end buyer?
Um, Through Facebook, I believe it was. Yeah, I didn't have a buyer's list at the time, so it was just putting it on Facebook, and found an in buyer on there. Had several people say they were interested. A lot of people kicking tires. Ended up selling it on Facebook Marketplace.
Just
Yeah.
that easy, huh? You don't need all the fancy software and you don't need a third party to dispo. Sometimes you can just put it on Facebook Marketplace and find the end buyer.
Dispo for me, for our business, has never been the hardest part of the business. I like to tell investors you're more of a marketing company than you are a real estate company, because it's all about finding the off market property. It's about acquisitions. If you can buy right, there's always someone you can sell the property to. We never had problems selling property as long as we bought it at the right price.
Yeah, when I started, I was taught and I adopted. It took some while to get through my false beliefs that I had at the time, but I was taught if you get a good deal, the money, the buyers, the vendors, the contractors, everyone finds you. There's
Yeah.
no shortage of money. There's no shortage of end buyers. There's no shortage of anything that you think you need. The only shortage is a good deal. And so if you can
Yep.
find that, every other problem solves itself.
Absolutely. I agree with that advice 100%.
And so you're in Atlanta, Georgia, right? And what
Yep.
year was that when you first got started?
So that time that I was telling you about was actually 2018. I had flipped a few houses before that, just on the side. I was working other jobs or doing other things, and would come across a house and say, "Hey, let's flip this house." My wife loved real estate, and I had a background in construction, so that was kind of buy the house, do the work ourselves. I would do all the physical labor. She would help me lay tile and paint the house. It might take us 6 or 8 months and then sell it, and try to make a little money on it. And we did a couple of those. And then in 2016, I actually had sold a company that I had and went to work for a friend of mine who was flipping over 100 houses a year, and really got to see a bigger vision of what that could look like, that people can do that kind of volume. And that was what kind of launched me into growing and scaling from that point. After I worked with him for a couple of years, I then went out on my own in 2018 and started, flipping and wholesaling at that time. So that was the first deal I did on my own. I'd flipped a few houses before that, like I said, but that was the first deal I did once I decided to go full time.
Wow. So when you were doing flips in the beginning, before you started wholesaling, you said that you and your wife did some of the work you get yourself, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So you have a background in it. So I'm not concerned about you doing that, especially now as experienced as you are as a real estate investor. But for new people listening, I would say the least profitable, least time efficient thing you can do is repair a property yourself. Somebody once told me every time you lift a hammer, you lose money.
Yeah.
Um, and particularly if you're not, from a construction background and you don't know how to do the stuff yourself. And so, do you still rehab properties yourself today?
Absolutely not. I won't touch them. In fact, I can't stand contractors. I'm a licensed contractor too, for commercial and residential, and I can't stand dealing with contractors. So, but no, we have crews now. We've done it enough that we have crews that we hire subcontractors to do the work. And I have a project manager who runs all our projects. But I would agree that doing the work yourself is a loser's game. It's not going to work out in the long run. You can't do it fast enough or cheap enough as people who are experienced and are doing it every day. So, as an example, when we were doing that, my wife was actually a math teacher at a local high school, and I had a full time job. So it was nights and weekends where we would go over there and work. And so, number one, we were exhausted all the time because we're 15 hours a day laying tile, or painting, and so we were worn out. And then in addition to that, it took us forever to finish the project. So now I tell everybody when I talk to them, find a good contractor, go hire a good contractor. You may have to go through a few of them to find somebody that you work well with, but having someone to oversee the project, especially if you have a normal 9 to 5 job, because you can have a contractor over there overseeing a tile layer or a painter or a roofer, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. You can't be there because you're teaching school. So unless you're a full-time investor and you have the time to go spend over there, I think it's always better to hire a contractor and let them hire all the subcontractors to do all the work.
Yeah, and while we're on the subject of contractors, I've got to ask you, can you share some tips of how to vet contractors or how to keep them on time, on budget? Do you have any advice on that?
I do. I think the best piece of advice that I can give on that is go find other investors and ask them who they're using. So one of the ways that I built our investing business, our real estate business that we currently have, is through connecting with other wholesalers and flippers, going to the local RIAs, going to the local meetups, introducing myself, talking to people. Hey, let's go grab coffee. Let's go grab lunch. And hey, I've got a project coming up and I need a roofer. Do you happen to know a good roofer? And over time of establishing relationships and asking other people, they would share their contacts, because it's not people who work for them. It's just a third party roofer or a third party contractor. So they would share their contact information. I would use them. If I liked them, I would continue using them. If I did not, I would, go find another one. But the majority of them did not come through, the yellow pages or, searching on Google or searching on Facebook or, different apps. It came from asking other people who are in the same business that I'm in. Who do you use? Who do you recommend? And it's when you get into it, it's a fairly small business as far as how many people are legitimately full-time real estate investors, say in the Atlanta market. We all kind of know each other. We all help each other and support each other. So I think building relationships with other investors and asking them who they use is key.
Yeah, and I've used a technique in the past, and you tell me if this is a good or a bad idea. So I did something in the past where a contractor tells me, okay, a project's going to take 3 weeks. And I say, okay, great. Here's a contract. And it says in there that if they finish early, they get $100 a day for every day they finish early. If they finish
Hmm.
late, then there's a penalty for each day that they're late. And then the discussion went from, okay, it's not maybe 3 weeks. Can we get 2 months just to be safe?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the real number comes out. Does that work? Is that unprofessional? Does that scare away contractors? I mean, how would you feel if I gave you that contract as you might being my GC?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually a more professional way to handle it. And if you look at professional residential builders, large residential builders, or commercial contractors, they all use contracts like that. So I don't mind if you tell me how long it's going to take. Put a couple weeks buffer on there. That's fine with me as long as I know what to plan for. I'm fine with it. Put extra 2 weeks or 3 weeks on there, but don't tell me you can finish it in 4 weeks and then it take 8 weeks because then I'm going to be unhappy. But I would say in our industry specific to flipping, it does push contractors away because the majority of these contractors who are doing our work are not they don't have 10 crews out working. They're not used to signing contracts and working from Gantt charts and spreadsheets and things like that. They're local guys in their pickup truck who are trying to make a living. They're living week to week, paycheck to paycheck, maybe a little better than that, but they're not as used to scheduling and staying on time as some of the commercial guys or the larger residential guys. So I would say if you can get that, that's fantastic. But what I've seen in my experience is that it pushes contractors away more than it allows them to sign and stick to the contract.
And when you're doing this, I like what you said about giving more buffer. I've done that from the get go. If they say 6 weeks, I'm like, let's make it seven.
Yeah.
Because they always, some contractors, it's almost like, I hate to say it this way, some contractors like a rolling Ponzi scheme.
Mm.
And so, especially with small mom and pop residential contractors, where they're trying to get a deposit from you to start this
Yeah.
job so they can take that money and go finish the project they're behind schedule on.
Hmm.
So they're always trying to make it sound too good, like really good, so you'll sign up with them because they're not trying to they're not trying to renovate your house, they're trying to acquire your business.
Yeah.
And something will always go wrong with your contractors. Have a flat tire, their guys won't show up to work, their truck will break down, they will get their tools stolen out of the back of their truck when their truck is parked in their driveway at home. So there's always going to be something that goes wrong. So I give a lot of grace on time,
Hmm.
but I give them that grace in the beginning. And then as we go along, I'm like, just a reminder, we only got 10 days left. Where are we?
Yeah.
And so stay on them and staying present. How do you feel about being at the job site? Because I've done jobs where only go at the beginning and the end, and I've been on jobs where I go every day or every other day. How do you feel about the customer or the GC or whoever being on the job site every day with the guys? Is that a nuisance? Do you love it? Does it get the job done?
I think it does. I think it gets the job done. I've done both as well. And, now when you're working on multiple projects at a time, I can't go to every job. So I'll usually go at the beginning and then at the end. I do have a project manager that runs our projects. But I think if you have a good contractor who is staying on top of the project, then it's fine for them to be there. They're scheduling and managing the subcontractors that they're using. And so I think it's good for them to be there. If I'm the owner or the investor, I shouldn't have to be there. Otherwise, why am I paying a contractor? Um, but I think, like you said, I think with upfront, setting the stage up front with a contractor. Here's what I expect. All right, you say it's going to take 4 weeks. I know how this works. It usually takes longer. Something happens. So let's go 6 weeks. I know you say it's going to cost $25,000. Let's put 5% buffer in there because it always takes longer and it always costs more than what you expect. Always. Even if you add 10%, it's going to cost more because psychologically, I think we say, oh, well, we've got a little extra money in the budget. So let's spend a little bit more on the stove or on the refrigerator or let's go ahead and do a new sidewalk. And so I think setting the stage up front with the contractor of what you expect. And then I'm pretty hard on them about this is what you told me. And you have to have it done by then, especially if I'm managing a project because, I might have my electrician come in on Monday. He says he's going to be done by Tuesday. I'm going to have drywall come in on Wednesday and then trim on Thursday and paint. And I have all this stuff lined up so that it can work quickly and get done quickly. Well, if all of a sudden the electrician can't show up on time, he's going to be 3 days late. Well, now every project that I have, every subcontractor after that has to move out, and they've already got stuff scheduled. So that's how projects get slowed down and get pushed out. And so you really have to find a contractor who manages his subcontractors really tight, set the expectation up front. This is what we expect, and this is what we're going to hold you to. And as long as if you do get pushed out, you have to let me know as soon as possible, because I've got 10 other people I've got to contact to reschedule. So just managing it really tight is the key to a good contractor.
Yeah, so that brings me to my next question. What is a reasonable amount of downtime for you? Should the contractors not be coming to work on the weekends? Should there be 1 day a week the contractors aren't there, 4 days a week? And I'm speaking about residential construction, single family homes being renovated, as because most of
Mm.
our listeners are buy and hold investors and flippers. And so if I'm hiring a GC, a professional GC, and we're doing like a total gut renovation of a house, how often should my project not have bodies on site working?
I say 5 days a week there should be some work going on. I'm a believer that I want people to work hard, but I want them to enjoy family and social activities and spend time with their kids and do stuff like that. So I don't expect people to work on Saturdays and Sundays, but I expect work to be going on every day, Monday through Friday. So if I show up any day during business hours, somebody better be on that project working. And if they're not, it's costing me money because, whether you're using your own money or you're using private lenders or hard money loans, every day that it takes you to finish that project is costing you money. So if I'm going to pay you to do the tile work or the paint or the roof, then I expect you to be there and getting it done. Otherwise, it's coming out of my pocket, and that's not okay. So now if you miss a Wednesday because it pours down rain all day, well, you might need to make it up on Saturday in order to hit the time frame you gave me, and there's nothing I can do about that. But at least every day, Monday through Friday, I want someone working on my job every day.
Yeah, that's how I've felt in the past as well. Is like I'm nervous when there's nobody on my job for the day, and I have a project right now I'm doing this on. I have cameras on the house, and then
Mm-hmm.
I have one of those like mobile Wi-Fi hotspot things that you pay for by the
Yep.
month from AT&T. And so
Mm-hmm.
I can see the cameras from my phone at the house. And you can even go a step further and put smart locks on the home that are
Okay.
connected as well, so you can buzz the people in and out of the house. And I've had some projects that are like an hour or more away from me. I
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely love that, and I let them know that, hey, I'm gonna have cameras on there, and I don't put the home internet on. I use like a mobile Wi-Fi hotspot box thingy. That's
Mm-hmm.
then it's got a battery pack in it because the power is going to be cut off and cut on here and there. So use
Yep.
battery powered cameras and a battery powered Wi-Fi. Because magically the power would be off all the time if the contractor,
Right.
knew that those things were hardwired. And so I've gotten really good response time from general contractors, just knowing there's cameras on. I don't bother them about it. I just let them know, hey, your materials and your tools are going to be safe here, motion activated. If anything comes up missing, I can get you the video forwarded to you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done remote investing like far away from you on single family?
I have not much, not a lot. I've always kind of been the local focused, and I even tell people now, people that we work with and teach how to flip houses and how to wholesale. Um, I think that I know of people who are very successful, even wholesaling in other markets, but I recommend starting in your own market because I know the roads, I know the streets, I know the neighborhoods, I know the school districts, I know the values, and so I think it's vitally important to at least start in your own market. And so you get to know all the ins and outs once you become an expert there and you learn, especially if you're doing off market properties. So you're trying to do outbound marketing like direct mail or pay per click or cold calling or texting. You need to know which one of those channels works, what your ROI is, how many calls you're going to have to make before you're going to get a deal in your own market before you try to replicate that somewhere else. So my opinion is work in your own market, become an expert in your own market, and then take what you're doing that's working successfully there and replicate that somewhere else. But I think in order, especially to flip, if you're going to be actually flipping houses in another market, you really need to have a local contractor there, a local real estate agent there who can help you understand values. And anybody can look online at Zillow or Redfin or something, but those are not accurate all the time, as we know. But having a local agent who can pull the local MLS and see, okay, this is what a house will sell for once it's rehabbed. A local contractor who knows the cost of work that's going to be done in that place. It's very different, the price to do remodeling in Atlanta as opposed to California, much different pricing. And so the only time we've done it, to answer your question, the only time we've done it is if it was a short-term rental, something that we were buying, even if we were paying close to retail for it, because we're going to keep it as a short-term rental. And I know what rent rates are there. Then we were willing to invest outside of our market, but not if I was going to flip a house.
Okay. So have you ever used like cameras and remote Wi-Fi? Probably not, because most of your deals are within driving distance, and you like to go to the job site a lot, right?
Most of them are within driving distance. We have used some cameras and Wi-Fi. Yes, we have done that some. Either when it was in an area of town that wasn't as safe, and we would have air conditioning units getting stolen all the time. So we would set up cameras there, or on houses that we were remodeling in nicer neighborhoods. Some of our short-term rentals were in nicer neighborhoods, gated communities, and so we had cameras there so we could watch the contractors who were coming in and out, make sure they were there when they were supposed to be, and make sure they weren't walking off with any of the expensive appliances or furniture or anything.
Yeah. So are you guys still big in the short-term rental space? Have you scaling up, scaling down? How's that working out for you?
Yeah, we're not. We've sold all of our short-term rentals. We saw a huge dip over the last year. We were down probably 50% on our short-term rentals year over year in 2024. So 2022 was great. 2023 slowed down. 2024 was 50%. And so we sold all of our short-term rentals. We still have some long-term rentals and some other stuff, but we sold all of our short-term.
Wow. And was there any regulations that came into effect in Atlanta that impacted short-term rentals?
There were not in the areas where we were. Our short-term rentals were not in town. They were out in golf communities and lake communities and stuff like that. So we didn't have any regulations that impacted that. It was just a matter of, when we bought the properties, it was an investment and we were making money for a while. So they certainly appreciated, because, as you know, we've been in a seller's market for a few years. So they appreciated over several years. When it became a point where they weren't staying rented enough to cover the costs, we looked at it and said, well, that's not a good investment anymore. It was a good investment when we bought it, when it was staying occupied. Now it's not. It's not a good investment. Sold it, made a good return because of the appreciation, and, put that money into self-storage or other deals.
Yeah. So you brought up self-storage. So that brings me to my next question. So what are you working on now?
Yeah, so we're building a new Class A, 115,000 square foot, 3-story self storage facility outside of Atlanta, which is a big change from single family flipping.
Yeah, that is a polar opposite change. Class A, new construction, self-storage. So let's dive in on that. Are you guys using an SBA loan, small business loan? Did you syndicate? Do you have partners? How did you fund it?
Yeah, that's a great question. This could be a whole hour conversation on its own because I've learned so much. But I originally, I think of wholesaling, new construction, and flipping as transactional businesses. And what I mean by that is I go find a lot, build a house and sell it. I have to go find another lot. Or I find a flip, I rehab it, I sell it, make some money. Now I have to go find my next flip. So I consider that transactional businesses. And so even when we scaled up and we're doing a lot, it was higher cost of marketing, more marketing in order to keep the machine going. And so I started looking at doing something that created more generational wealth, is what I call that. So you do more work up front, cost more money up front, but then it lasts a lot longer. It pays you month in and month out for as long as you keep the property. And so I think that would apply to commercial property that you own, certainly multifamily and self-storage. And so when I was investigating those, I recognized that the self-storage model I loved, because people usually go drop off their stuff and they don't come back for a while. They're certainly not there all day, every day. They don't live there like they do in an apartment in a multifamily property. You're not fixing toilets. Like in our giant facility, we're going to have one bathroom, one female bathroom, one male bathroom, and that's it. So we don't have to worry about replacing a bunch of water heaters and all that kind of stuff. So I started investigating self-storage. I was looking for existing properties that I could buy and value add, just like you do with a single family home. Buy an old mom and pop facility, put some money into it, raise rents, and then turn around and sell it or keep it. I didn't come across anything, but I did come across these two single family houses that were on 4.5 acres beside each other. And they were next door to a Walmart, a brand new Walmart. And so during my due diligence, I recognized that the future land use map showed this property as commercial. So I called the county. I had the property under contract. I called the county and I said, what's the future plan for this? And they said general commercial. So I reached out to a buddy of mine and who was a commercial broker and said, hey, what would you put the value at this? I had the property at a much less price than that. So I knew it was a pretty safe bet. If I had to just turn around and sell it as commercial property, I could, or I could flip the two houses as the original plan. So I ended up buying the property, taking it through a special use permit and getting it approved for the zoning. Once I had done that, I realized, well, I've never done this. This is a almost $14 million project. And I've never raised that much money at one time. So I went to a partner, a friend of mine who has done about 50 self-storage deals. And I'd met him through a mastermind we were in together, and he was primarily focused on self-storage while I was doing the single family. So I came to him and I said, here's all the information. I own the property. I've already got it approved for the self-storage facility, but I don't know how to structure a deal. I've never done this before. I don't know how to raise that much money. So I brought him in as a 50-50 partner with me. And he helped me structure the deal, put the deal together, which is a combination of a bank loan and then syndicating, which basically means we're raising money from other investors, giving them a return on their money plus a piece of the equity.
Wow. And what kind of fund was that you put together? Do you take accredited? Do you take accredited, non-accredited?
Yes, accredited.
Only, yeah. Accredited only. Okay.
Accredited only. Yeah, I was trying to think of the number, and I don't remember it off the top of my head of what exactly it was. Reg D, blah blah blah. But only accredited investors, and we put that together, got it all approved. We had to get set up with the SEC and approved all that kind of stuff, and have our attorneys write up all the paperwork. So it's long term. It takes a while to do all that, much longer than a residential deal. But the returns are outstanding as well.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, an accredited investor, there's two pools of investors in the world. There's like accredited and non-accredited, and certain syndications and funds, depending on how it's structured by the sponsor, which in this case is Brendan. Depending on how the sponsor structures the fund, it's either going to be accredited or non-accredited. And what that means is, if you have a net worth of $1 million or more, excluding your personal home, or if you're single making $200,000 a year, or married making over $300,000 a year, with the expectation that that's going to continue, then they have a certification process where usually a third party is involved, and they certify that you are an accredited investor. If you're accredited, you can get into some of these more complicated and lucrative deals. And if you're non-accredited, there are syndications and funds you can get into, but there's a lot more restrictions on them. Some of the funds will only allow 35 non-accredited people in at a time. And so you went with only accredited people. And what for this project, what's the projected hold time? Like if I'm going to come to you and I'm going to put $100,000 in. Also, what was the minimum in the fund? I guess I should start with.
So our minimum investment is $50,000.
$50,000 accredited only investors. And then if I brought $50,000 to you, and if this offering was still open, how long would my money be in the deal, and what are the projected returns?
So worst case scenario is 3 years. Best case scenario is a year, and I'll explain the difference. So we're projecting a 1.84 to 2.12 return. So that's 1.8, almost 2 times your return is what we're targeting. So with these new projects, new builds, the REITs, the big public storage and extra space, and those guys, they don't like spending the time and the money to develop one of these from scratch. So they'll come in and buy it after we develop it. And so we've already had conversations with them about what they would pay for our facility once it's completed. So in the past, and still sometimes now, some of the big REITs, the big self storage owners and managers, they want to see it 85% leased up before they'll buy it. But because they also know how much they're going to be able to raise rents every year, they also many times are willing to buy it at CO, at certificate of occupancy. So we did our underwriting for this. It takes about 12 months to build the property, and then about 2 years to lease up to 85% occupancy. So that's the 3-year scenario. Build it for 12 months, lease it up for 2 years, and then we have an exit at that point. The other option is if we were able to sell it at CO. And so that's 12 months. The only way we would do that is if we could get the same or similar return that we could get by leasing it up ourselves. And again, in the past, that was not as common, but over the last couple of years, the big boys like Public Storage and Extra Space, they know that they're going to be raising rents anyway once they get it leased up. So many times they would come in at CO and pay the same thing they would pay as if it were 85% leased up, which is crazy. And again, we're not counting on that. But the last facility that my partner Fernando did was outside of Chicago, and that's exactly what happened. They came and paid him at CO what he was hoping to sell it for once it was fully leased up. So he was able to give his investors a 2.1 return in 12 months. So you put 50,000 in, you get 100,000 back in 12 months, which is again not common. It would be great if that happened, but it may take 3 years for us to lease it up.
Yeah, not common at all. I don't want people to listen to this and go out and say, I'm an credit investor. I want to invest in syndication. I'm only doubling my money in 12 months. Those are
Yeah,
not common. A lot of
not at all.
syndications I see, because I've invested in the past in syndications, a lot I see are 3, 5, 7, or 10-year holds, and then they have different points where they might refinance or they might sell. So that's very uncommon that you do that. So you said something earlier I want to bring up. You said something about a future use map. Can you explain what that
Mhm.
is in a little more detail?
Sure. So the future land use map is something that the county will create. And so what they do is they look at the properties inside their county, the roads inside their county, and they'll say, okay, we want this area to stay as a residential corridor. There's a lot of neighborhoods here, a lot of people, walking around, walking their dogs. So we don't want this to turn into commercial. Then there's other parts of the county where they say, this is a 4-lane road, or, it's an area that already has some grocery stores or a shopping mall. And so even though there's a couple of residential houses still on the street, in the future, we want this to turn into commercial property because it makes sense for the surrounding property. And they create a map, and that's called a future land use map. And so it's a public document. You can go online and look it up for your particular county. In some smaller counties, you may have to actually go to the county to find that. But for Atlanta and for Lawrenceville, where we're building this property, it was online. And so I was able to see that although these two houses that were beside each other were currently zoned as residential properties, the county had already had meetings and determined they wanted that to turn into commercial property. So made it much easier for me. I still had to get what's called a SUP, special use permit, for self-storage because self-storage does not fall under the general commercial heading, which is what they had it as. But it was much easier to go from general commercial to self-storage than it would have been to go from residential to commercial to self-storage.
Awesome. And I'm here in Texas. Does every county around the country have a future land use map? Is this just a Georgia thing?
No, it's everywhere. Some counties, again, larger counties are probably more professional. They have it online for you to see. It's public information. Some of the smaller counties, you may have to go down and meet with someone or look in their map books to see. But every county that is looking at their property and within their county and trying to lay out, okay, this is what we want to happen over time. Because at the end of the day, it's better for them too. They have certain areas that are designated commercial, certain areas that are designated residential, and they really don't want that to mix unless they've approved it for like a mixed use facility, which obviously mixed use is where you have retail on the ground floor, restaurants, bars, and shops, and then you may have 3 stories or 4 stories of condos or townhomes above it. That's an area on the map that they determined this would be a good mixed use facility. So you probably hear live, work, and play. they're creating these communities where you can live, you can walk downstairs to the restaurant, you can walk downstairs to your office. And so that's considered a mixed use facility. And again, the future land use map will show this has been zoned for mixed use facility in the future. So most counties, I would say 95% of the counties have a future land use map.
So when this future land use map is published, do like land prices go up immediately, or does it kind of take some time for the values of land and lots to change, even with that information out there?
I would say it takes time for sure. It doesn't have an immediate impact on the prices, and here's why: 99.9% of the people have no idea what I just said. Right? They don't know what a future land use map is. They're not looking at that. So those of us who are developing properties, we're looking for land that falls into this category. I happened to stumble upon it. I wasn't out looking for it on the future land use map, but I had done enough development that I knew to look and see what the future land use map showed. But the majority of people, as an example, the people that I bought these two houses from, they had no idea that their two houses were targeted for future on the future land use map to turn commercial. They knew that a new Walmart had been built next door, but they didn't think about, this will eventually become commercial property. So they were just looking to sell the two houses for what they thought they were worth, which was a great deal for me. So I think most people don't know it, but certainly as you see a Walmart or a grocery store or a high-end auto dealership or something like that pop up on the same street, your prices are going to start going up. If you have 3 acres, 4 acres, 5 acres, and you see Walmart just paid $1 million for this property, it's going to impact your property prices over time. But it takes a while because most people have no idea what it is.
Yeah, I've been in real estate for like 8 years now, and I've never heard of the future land use map. I wrote down to look that up for my county here in Harris
Yeah.
County after this call. Love that.
Yeah.
And I had another question. REITs. So REITs are these real estate investment trusts on Wall Street, and they raise a lot of money, and there's a lot of special rules around them. And a REIT can always pay more for a property than you or I can, right? They have a lot of capital. Their returns on their capital is acceptable to be lower than you and I would like. And
Hmm.
so if you want to sell something, like selling it to a hedge fund or a REIT is usually the highest paying client that you can find. So how
Yeah.
did you make contact with REITs, and how did you arrange that you're going to build a new construction self-storage unit and hand it over to them?
So, as I mentioned before, when I was talking about building relationships with other wholesalers and other flippers to find out what kind of contractors you want to use, I'm all about working with other people when it makes sense. And so, as I mentioned, I went and partnered with my buddy Fernando. I had watched him and his properties, his projects over the course of several years. I knew he had a lot of experience and I didn't. And I was told by several people, you're a licensed contractor, you can figure out how to build a self-storage facility. It's not that difficult. But at the end of the day, I was gonna either pay the dumb tax because I had no idea what I was doing. So I was gonna pay the dumb tax, or I was gonna share the equity with somebody who knew what they were doing and could teach me what I needed to know about this particular aspect of the business. So when I partnered with Fernando, he already had a relationship with those people because he's built 50 of these facilities before. So I borrowed by giving him equity and bringing him into the deal. I was able to learn from him and borrow from his knowledge rather than me having to come up with it on my own. It would take me years to build a relationship with, the right people at Public Storage and the right people at Extra Space Storage, not to mention all the general contractors around the country who are building these self-storage facilities. So I could have figured it out eventually, but I probably would have lost a lot of time and money. And by partnering with him, he had the experience and the relationships. He knew how to structure this deal financially so that it made sense to the banks, made sense to the investors, the limited partner investors. So I think, again, something I would recommend to anybody, whether it be in the single family world, multifamily, or self storage, it is much cheaper to find someone who has knowledge, experience, and relationships, bring them on in either a profit sharing or a partnership deal if it makes sense, and learn from them while you're doing the project rather than trying to do it yourself.
Wow. And so Are you looking to do more of these deals? Is this the business model going forward? Is this like a one-time thing?
It is. It is a business model going forward. Yes, I'm looking for more. I'm looking for more land right now. I like the new development aspect of it. It's much more difficult. It's kind of like I mentioned before. Like I started flipping before I started wholesaling. Most investors start with wholesaling because it's cheaper, it's easier to figure out, and then eventually, once you grow, you have more capital. Then you jump into the flipping. I did it backwards, and for some reason, I guess I'm just I think backwards, but I started with new construction on self storage before I had ever had any experience with buying smaller, less expensive, older self storage facilities. But I actually like it a lot more. It takes time, it takes a lot more money, but at the end of the day, the returns are life changing and generational. And so, what it costs to build these facilities and what these REITs will pay for them right now in our current market there's a big gap there. There's a big return, and so it might take 3 to 4 years from the time I buy the property until we get it ready to sell. But the returns are so much larger that I'm going to continue doing this. I will continue running our flipping business as well. We still flip houses. We have multiple projects going on right now, so we're going to continue doing that as well. I mentioned before the show we have a private lending business as well. So we do private lending to other investors, and that's all single family. So that's more focused on the flipping business. So we're going to continue to run those and uh, continue to find land to build self storage deals on. Those are, if we find one deal every 2 years, that's a good clip. That's a good rate. So it's not going to be big scale where we're trying to do 10 of them a year. Um, we'll keep doing our flipping business and our private lending business, and then do the self storage as we come across those.
And if somebody listening to this has land in Atlanta and the surrounding areas and they want to have you take a look at it or they want to sell it to you, how would they get in touch with you?
So a couple of ways, certainly on our social media. So we have it's my name, Brandon Rickman, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Our YouTube channel is The Flip Genius, and our website for our flipping business is theflipgenius.com. And then you can certainly share my cell phone number in the show notes, 404 People can reach out to me there. I always respond personally. We do have some virtual assistants who do some of our social media and some of our posting for us, but I check all that and respond personally. So I'd love to connect with anybody from that has property, like you said, that might fit for self storage, or people who are just have questions about flipping and want to learn more about wholesaling and flipping. I'd love to connect and help in any way I can.
That's awesome. Wow. Usually it's just me who I give my cell phone number out at the end of all these episodes. So I'm surprised that you gave out your cell phone number too. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
the only
it's
one.
no, I think it's a good way to do business. We're at the end of the day, there's a little philosophical opinion here, but business can't run on its own. It can't set itself up and establish itself and run. It has to have people there. So every business is a people business, and I believe that for us to do business with each other, we need to like each other, we need to know each other, and so I'm fine talking to people on the phone and sharing knowledge that I have and experience I have, trying to encourage them and help them to do better and learn more. And sometimes you do get a call from somebody that's just looking to harass you or kick tires, and nowadays you can block phone numbers, so not a problem.
Yeah, that's right. It is easy to block phone numbers. So I'm going to move to the last part of the show here, um, with the questions I ask every guest on every show. So a lot of us are on a certain course in life, and we think it's of our own free will. We think we chose the life we're on, but really, it turns out that we were just prescribed a life by either where we grew up, what our parents taught us, our friends around us, maybe where we went to school. And then as we're sailing our ship through the course of life, something changes our course. And for a lot of us, that's a book. So, which book changed the course of your life the most?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with to an extent, where you're raised and what kind of family you grew up in, what their perspective was, and what they taught you. That's a huge part of your makeup. My family all thinks I'm crazy because I'm an entrepreneur, and they all worked for companies and for a long time and had good income and good retirement and did well. But it's middle class upbringing, and so I understand it's different based on where you grow up. But they were all worked for a job 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. I've been an entrepreneur, and they think I'm crazy. But I will say that I believe that you can change your perspective. You can have a mind shift change, and reading books is a huge part of that. So, one of the first business books that I read that had a huge impact on me was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I know that's very popular in the real estate world, but that was kind of the first vision for me of dreaming bigger, thinking bigger, understanding the difference between an asset and a liability. Um, I have a 14-year-old son, and he's actually reading it now. I probably read it when I was 35. I'm getting him to read it at 14 to set him on the right course. Um, and then right now, my favorite book is Never Split the Difference. It's a negotiating book. Chris Voss, and I believe is the author, former FBI negotiator. So it's a great book about negotiating. He tells a lot of stories about his negotiating when he was with the FBI. So that's a great book. I think one of your favorites as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, I've got that on the shelf behind me. I was looking for it. I can't find it. And then I also have an original copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, as well as
Wow.
modern copies, and I give them out. So I now have the cheap paperback ones because my
Yeah.
original like hard copy that I did notes on, I gave that away. I wish I would have kept it. And so a lot of my books on my shelf actually are like the second or third time I purchased them, so I
Mm.
go with like the paperback stuff, and they're not notated, they're clean, they're brand new, because I just keep giving my books away to people
Yeah.
over the years. But yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad, some people call it the Purple Bible. We
Yeah.
all I think many of us started there. Actually, I interviewed somebody on my podcast, the first episode, V Lee, and she said I never read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and she's a
Wow.
very successful house flipper here in Houston. And
Wow. That's
so
surprising.
that's the only person I've ever ran into
Yeah.
that
Right.
said they never read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Chris Voss is good.
Yeah.
Never Split the Difference. And is there anything else you're reading right now?
You mentioned the Purple Bible. The Bible has always been very impactful for me. The regular Bible, not the purple one. So, have read through that multiple times. I would say actually that's probably the most life changing book that I've ever read from a personal standpoint. So yeah, love reading that. I usually read that daily in addition to my personal and business reading. So
That's
yeah, I would
awesome.
say those three. Those three are the key.
That's awesome, man. And so I'm a big believer in the Go Giver here, and I talk
Mm.
about it in every episode. So if anybody has not read the Go Giver yet, please do. But I like to frame this for everybody as if you were no, when you were a child, your parents had to give to you long before you were capable of giving back to them. And when
Mm.
you work a traditional job, you work 2 weeks or more before you receive a paycheck. So if your plan is to hold firewood in your hand and look at the fireplace and say, "Give me warmth first, and then I'll give you this wood," it's going to be a very cold winter. So I ask
Yes.
every guest, what can you give the audience today?
Yeah, so I actually recorded a video. I have a whole set of videos that I've recorded showing how we find properties, how we do marketing, how we do everything. And rather than me just standing up talking, I'm actually showing my computer and showing how we do the things that I'm telling people how to do. And so I have a video that I would be happy to send to anybody that's interested. It's about 25 minutes long, so it's a pretty in-depth video. But it's 10 ways to find your next flip or wholesale. It applies to both. So I go through 10 different marketing channels. 5 of them are free and 5 of them are paid, and I show you on my computer how you go about finding these properties using each of those specific methods. So I'd be happy to send that link to anybody who's interested. They can reach out to me, like we talked about before, and I'd be happy to send them that video, and they can watch that and hopefully find their next flip using one of those methods.
And how should they best reach out to you to get that?
So my cell, they can certainly text me or give me a call on my cell phone, which I shared, and you can put in the show notes. On our website, theflipgenius.com, I actually have a calendar link in there where they can schedule a call. And then my email address is on there as well, so they can click and send me an email. I'd be happy to send them the link to the video.
Awesome. And then what can our audience give you today?
I think just some support, some love and support on our social media. So again, it's most of it is at Brandon Rickman, and then or the Flip Genius, flipgenius.com, and our YouTube page at Flip Genius. Love for people to watch our videos. We do a lot of information sharing, so we're giving information away for free, like how to find properties, how to negotiate. The private lenders that we work with, the hard money lenders, we share that information. So I would love for people to go watch those videos, read that content, like it, share it, subscribe. Just if they feel like it's helpful to them and might be helpful to others, we'd love for them to like it and subscribe to those things.
Awesome. And for anybody wanting to follow me, I am on Instagram at Michael B. Someone, or on my YouTube, Michael Hong. And I give out my cell phone number as well on every show. It's 832-301-9672. Shoot me a text. Don't call me. I get so many spam calls. I will not answer the phone. And if I don't already know you, or you haven't texted me ahead of time. And so this is the Be Someone podcast with Michael Hong, signing off.